Alright, in this video we're going to work some more on the Google sidebar, and our main focus here is to work on the animations. For example, if I tap social networks, we have this social network bar that animates out. We can also toggle the other ones as well. Some important pieces to discuss here are the following. Now if I'm tapping here, I want to make sure I cannot touch anything behind this animated bar, but yet I want to be able to touch maybe this bar here to animate it. Also, what I want to happen is this. If I were to slide away, what you're going to notice is that everything does appear to slide away, but if I go a little bit slower, what you're going to see is that bar that was, see how it faded in right there? And now if I slide it out a lot slower, notice it fades out right around there. We need it to fade out, that way the touch for these icons that you see here will be not there. You can't touch them as long as they're fading out. So we're going to resume with this part 5 now, the animation pieces. I have a little bit of literature over here to help guide me so I don't forget these particular pieces and where they go. But something we need to go ahead and do right off the bat is on this 3 screens that I have, you may have more, but I have 3 screens. I want this to animate out from the first screen, this Google sidebar. So let's go to that sidebar. Let's go to animation. Let's add a BG scroll. Let's set it to scroll. The rule is from center. The center screen is 1. And I want to set the speed to 200. By us setting the speed to 200, when we're on screen number 2, it will be completely off the screen. If I slide back to screen 1, it's completely on the screen. Perfect. So that's all we need to do for the sidebar. Now, let's head over to globals. And we need to add a few more globals here. The first one is AniDur, that stands for animation duration. This is going to be a number global, and I'm just going to click OK. I'm going to go ahead and set that to 10 for 1 second. It's going to take 1 second for these animations of our new icons that slide out on these rows here. It's going to take 1 second for them to occur. We also need a list global variable. I'm going to call it Go from my list. And if you're familiar with the list global, you have plenty of options here to name these however you want. I want to animate the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th rows, so I'm going to put a comma in between all of those. And I'm also going to include one more, an X. X is just basically a way of saying, hey, it's not 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8. And it's going to allow me to close that particular row of animated icons that I brought onto the screen. And for now, I'm going to set Go to that X value. Now back in our items, what's important now is that this sidebar, go ahead and have the number of rows that you want, the number of dividers that you want. Again, we can still tweak the globals all that we want, but if we go and add in new rows after this, you're going to have to change everything else from here on out. Let's take that sidebar. Let's copy. Now what you see here is an Auto Tools or Auto Apps add-on called Join. Don't worry about that. I'll talk more about that in a future video. Let's go ahead and paste that overlap group. Let's call this overlap group 4. Now, why am I calling it 4? You don't have to call it 4, but this is the 4th row. I want to work on animating this 4th row that you see right here. Remember, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd are going to actually open apps. This one down here at the bottom is going to open my settings, but these here, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, those are the rows that I want to animate. We're going to work on animating the 4th row right now. So let's go inside of that 4 overlap group. Now we're going to worry about the clip later. So this is animated pieces. We want this thing to fade in and scroll on the list global that we've created. We're going to set the speed of the scroll to GV width. The angle is 180. We're going to set the duration of both to GV AniDur. And there's actually one more piece here too. We need to adjust the position. So I'm going to show you that right now. I'm going to take this group that we just copied and pasted. I'm going to position it still at the center left, but I'm going to incorporate the GV width global to slide this thing over, and you'll see why right here in a second. So let's take GV width, let's divide it by 100, and let's multiply it by the width of the screen. Now what this is going to do is it's going to take this entire piece. See this duplicate we have over here? It's always going to be right beside where this original sidebar. This is the original sidebar. This is the number 4 that I'm working on right now. Now, right now you can see it. We will be using a clip in a little while to actually hide this. And we're going to animate this entire thing over here. But the only thing I really want to animate over here is what appears to be this piece right here. So what we have to do is we have to go back into our items, making sure we're still inside the 4 overlap group. Let's go to our background. Let's set its paint. Let's take off that global and let's set the color to completely transparent. That's already got rid of that background over here. Let's go back to all of our other items with the exception of row 4. So I'm going to come into my stack group. Let's go to the top rectangle. We don't want to delete it. We want to keep this spacing the same as what we have over here. That's why it's important to make sure you had this piece right before you move on to here. So I'm coming to that weather image. I'm going to go to its FX and I'm going to take off that texture bitmap. Now I'm going to go back to its paint. I'm going to set that to completely transparent as well. So check it out. We got rid of the weather image. It's completely transparent. We're still keeping all of our spacing though. And basically what I want to come and do for all of these pieces now, row 1, this row right here, we can completely delete this stack group here because we don't need any of those icons or that text. So I'm just going to completely delete that. Still maintain the spacing. Go to that shape. Go to its paint. Let's take off that steel rectangle. And let's make this a completely transparent rectangle. And now let's repeat this process. Now you could just copy and paste that transparent row that we have here, but I'm just going to preserve my numbers. I'm going to come to number 2, take off my stack group, go to that shape, change its paint to a completely transparent color. And what we're going to have to do here is we're going to have to repeat this. You can be like, oh my goodness, we got to do this for all of them. We have some shortcuts with copying and pasting, but for now I want to go through it step by step. So what you're going to do here, we want to get rid of everything. And when I say get rid of it, just make the color completely transparent. Let's make everything transparent with the exception of this 4th row that we want to animate. So I'm coming into 3 now, the one with the files. Don't forget the divider bar, same thing here, transparent paint. And now let's come and do the same thing for all of these down here. The only thing I want to see that's not transparent is this 4th row. So now that we've done that, this is the only thing we have showing, but what's nice about this, those items are still there, they're just completely transparent. So when we go in here and start changing the spacing, let me go ahead and show that to you right now. Head on over to globals. If we adjust the icon size, what you're going to notice is that this one over here is still staying the same as this one over here. If we do vertical extra, notice everything's still staying the same. Yeah, it looks a little jacked up, but I'm just going to bring this icon size back down, bump my vertical extra back down, and everything's still staying the way it should. This piece over here is staying right beside this piece over here. Not only that, when we adjust the width, notice it does move over because we have the position of this number 4 overlap group. We have its X offset set to use this width. So as I make this thing thinner, now my icon text size is too big. If I bump it down, that's teeny tiny. But here's my point. This piece here, number 4, is always going to stay right beside this Google sidebar. That's what works nice about that. Let me bump my width back up. It slides over. Let me make my text size a little bit bigger. And now we're kind of back to where we were at the beginning. Now what I'm going to do here for cosmetic purposes is I'm going to take my background color. I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to come down to my steel rectangle color. So these steel rectangles, this is just personal preference. Now I'm going to take that steel rectangle and I'm going to apply that same color right there. So basically what this is going to do is it's going to make my rows blend in with the background. If you don't like that, you don't have to do it. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to apply another color and I'm going to call it AniRect for animated rectangle. And for the animated rectangle, I'm just going to give it some type of dark gray, maybe somewhere right around here. And I'm going to come and apply that to this piece right here. That sits inside number 4, and it's going to be the only piece in the stack group. Well, it's going to be number 4, obviously, but it's going to be the only one that has the circle, that stack group that we didn't delete. I didn't delete anything out of here. I'm going to come to that rectangle, go to its paint, and I'm going to set that paint to AnyRect. So basically we have a slightly darker rectangle getting animated in whenever we do animate it in. Now by all means, you could come back and adjust these colors. You still have complete freedom here to go into your globals, take that still rectangle, and you can still give it some color if you wanted to. So there we go. You know, we got the background gray. This isn't really appealing, but it is what it is right now. So yeah, I can lighten up that still rectangle and we can animate in a darker rectangle. A lot of options here to give you the look that you want. Now I'm still not going to apply the clip yet, but what I want to come and do is I want to come into this sidebar. Now I'm inside of the sidebar. I'm not in 4 right now. I'm over here in this sidebar. I'm going to come to number 4 and I'm just going to use the circle. Now you could use this entire rectangle and you could touch the entire rectangle, but I'm just going to touch the circle, that icon that you see here. When I touch this, I want to change the list global. So our action is going to be toggle a global switch, and the only one that we have is go, and I'm going to set it equal to 4. So basically whenever I touch this icon, it's going to make that list global go. It's going to make it become a 4. Back inside of root, let's go to that overlap group called 4. Now we're inside of this. Let's go over to its animation. Now I don't want to do this particular scroll anymore. That's the one, I mean, if I show you what's going to happen now, if I do this number right here, notice the 4 is animating on BG scroll just like the original Google sidebar is. I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to delete that. So now if I start sliding, the 4 stays still. We want to do some different animations with this. So let's add an animation. Let's react on a formula, and the formula is going to be if GVGo is equal to 4, we want to animate it forward, otherwise we want to animate it back. Now here I have it set to fade in and scroll on the list global, but no, that's not correct. I want it to scroll on the list global and I want it to fade on the screen number that we are on. So scroll on the list global. So we have our scroll set up. We want to set the speed of the scroll to GV width, and the angle is 180, and the duration is GV any-dur. So let's go ahead and set that duration to GV any-dur. Let's set the speed to GV width, and let's set the angle to 180. Now what should happen here is if I touch this, this thing should animate in and slide over this. Let's find out. Notice that's exactly what happens. Now I don't have a way to make this thing go away yet on my setup here, but I can come back to globals. I can come down here to go, and notice go is 4 right now, but if I set this to X, it should slide back. Okay, so that's working the way it should, and notice it is sliding in exactly the distance that it needs to slide in. It's all of these number globals working together. In particular, the GV width is what's important here. And it works great. Let me bump the width down a little bit. Let me bump my text size down so it don't look all jacked up. And now what you've noticed is that, yes, we see more of this 4 overlap group. So if I come in here and animate this thing now, the 4 is still going to animate in, and it's still coming in exactly as far as it needs to come in. That's what works great about this. We'll come back down here to go, and I'm going to set it to X, and we're going to work on this a little bit more, because we're not in the clear yet. So back inside of 4, when we come to this number 4 in that overlap group, I'm going to go to that rectangle that we have here, and I'm going to go to its touch, and we want to block touch because we don't want to be able to touch anything beneath this rectangle. Especially when this thing slides out, we do not want to be able to touch anything that's on this particular bar. In my case, it would be just this circle icon here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to my touch, action, disabled block touch. That rectangle over here, when it slides over here, it's going to prevent me from touching anything that's on this Google sidebar that's in this region, wherever that rectangle is. Again, basically it's going to block me from being able to touch this one here, since this one's going to slide over it. I hope that makes sense. Now what we want to do inside of this number 4 right here that sits inside of our 4 overlap group, we want to work on this thing here in terms of putting our pieces up there. What do we want to see on this thing? So to make this easily visible, I'm going to go ahead and press this Google sidebar. That's going to bring this in so that we can see it. And now what I want to do, to be quite honest with you, is I want to take away this stack group as well. I know I didn't take it away at the beginning, but I'm going to go ahead and take it away right now. So deleting that thing, we still have this 4 bar here. And what I'm going to add is a font icon. Doesn't matter what you pick here. I'm just looking for something where I can close. Do I have anything with the close? I have an X. That's exactly what I want. For its paint, you can set it to whatever color you want. I'm going to use the text color. All right, now let's take this thing, let's position it in the center left of this group that it's inside of, which is going to put it right over here on the left-hand side. I like it exactly where it is, no padding needed for me. For its touch, I want to set that touch to toggle a global switch, and I want to toggle that go, and anytime I press a X on any of these, when we start animating the rest of them, we want to set that to a X. Now what you want to do inside of here, if you want those animated icons to come out, what we would do here is we need to add a stack group. Inside of that stack group, let's add some iconsy icons that we talked about in the previous video. To do that, I'm going to use a circle, set its width to the icon size. There's our circle. Go over to FX, texture, bitmap, calculator on the pick image. This is just a review from the previous video. Iconsy plugin, and I forget what group I'm in. I'm just going to do the G+ icon, use with custom, check it. Boom. Now, when we talked about iconsy, we talked about what happens when we touch that icon. We can open an app. I'm not going to cover that here. So I'm still inside of this stack group with that G+ icon. I'm going to copy and paste that. Now, this is not set up the way we want it. So inside of that stack group, layer, horizontal center. Let's do a margin of H margin if you want a gap in between these things. Maybe that's a little bit too much, but we can always adjust that H margin down. And what I want to do with this stack group is I want to position this entire stack group in the center right. That's going to make it hug way over here. And I want a little bit of right padding, and I want to use that H margin yet again. So that bumps it off that side over there. So what should happen now is if I press this X, it should slide away, which it does. If I press it, it brings it back. And now we got to work on this. So if I slide this away, you know, we still see that thing. So what we want to do first of all is the following. I'm going to come back to the overlap group with this 4 in it. Let's add another animation, react on a formula. And for this formula is the only time I really want to potentially see this animated icon is if SI screen. And SI screen will determine the current desktop screen, if supported. I haven't run across any issues with it with the various devices I've played around with. So if SI screen is equal to 1, I want to fade this thing in. Otherwise, I want to fade it out. So if our screen is 1, if we're on screen 1, that's when we see our Google sidebar, and that's when we potentially want to see these animated icons. So we want to fade it in when the screen is 1, otherwise we want to fade it out. So for that action, let's set it to fade in. And right now, let me come back to screen number 2. So as you can see up here, we're in screen 2. If I come back to screen 1, notice it does fade in. That's exactly what I want to happen. I'm just going to set this duration to anydir. And now what's going to happen? You know, I can still close it off. I can still bring it back. But what's important here is this. If you had those animated icons right there and we start to animate off the screen, it's still going to look a little jacked up, but right around here somewhere it's going to fade out, as you can see. Now when I bring it back, it's going to fade back in. That's fine. Now, how do we work on this part? You know, it does go away, but it's showing after the Google sidebar has gone off the screen. Well, it's an easy fix for this. What we want to do is go into our sidebar. Let's take that BG and let's copy it. Let's paste it. So we have a BG here. I'm going to slide that BG above 4. I'm going to call this BG now. I'm going to call it a clip. And I'm going to position this clip at the same spot that we have our original sidebar, which was center left. I'm going to set this animation for this thing to match that of the Google sidebar, the main sidebar that we talked about at the beginning. So it was a BG scroll from center, screen 1. Notice it's not all the way off. Set the speed to 200. So here's what's going to happen. Now when I slide this out, we see a whole bunch of stuff going on here. But when I slide this back, this is getting ready to be a clip. So this gray bar, this gray big piece that you see here, which will adjust, by the way, let's make sure we remember that as well. This shape is going to be adjusting based on the width of the screen. So everything's still going to work nicely here. But let me just go ahead and show you what it does. Let me come to the clip. Let me go to FX, mask, clip all. So it takes it away. That gray big piece that you just saw goes away. But now when I start animating off, it's going to clip that animated icons row. See that? We don't see it unless this thing comes out. And then we have that fading piece going on as well. The fading is important because we want these animated icons here, we want these to fade out when we do this. That way I can't touch here and open up something that's not really supposed to be opened up. So that clip is what's hiding this animated bar. Now, watch this. If I close that animated icons right here, the clip is hiding it over here. The clip is right there. That's where the clip is. So sliding that off, sliding it back on, bringing it back out, boom. So that's the main setup of getting these animated icons to work. Now, I know that was a bear. So here's what you can do. You can take this piece here, you can copy, you can paste. I'm going to name this one 5, and now just be careful with your organizing here. I'm going to go inside number 5, go into that stack group, and what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to swap these. Now, for me being OCD, I'm going to rename the swap here. I'm going to rename that one 4 because we're actually working on the 5th one now. So I'm going to name this one 5. And now what we're going to have here is this rectangle. I don't know if you can see it, but we do actually have the 5th one down here. I still have everything copied over, the rectangle with the disabled touch beneath it, the same X icon, that same stack group with those Google Plus icons. However, what we need to do now with this new 5 overlap group, let's go to animation, let's go to formula for scroll, and now we want if GVGO is equal to 5. We've copied and pasted. We don't have to do any of that nitty gritty work we just did a moment ago. Now all we have to do is come back to our main Google sidebar, go to its stack group, and I want to go down to number 5, which is going to be this little camera reel, this red one here. Go to that circle, and I want to touch, toggle the global switch, and I'm going to set it to go and number 5. So now what we should have is the following. When I press this, everything, I think I've got everything set up right. When I press this, it should take this top one away here. Let's see what happens. Perfect, it's working great. Now if I press 4, it should go away. Works great. Let's bring the 5 one back out. Let's go off the screen, scrolling off. Notice it is getting hidden. It's also fading out, and now it's going to come back and fade back in. We can close it away. And not only that, you may notice this red square that you see back here. So you see how we still see that red square because technically I'm inside of my Google sidebar. I can't touch that because this darker gray rectangle that you see here, it's blocking the touch. That's key. We can still touch items that are in front of that block touch, but we can't touch anything behind this rectangle here. So I hope you get that idea there. That was really easy compared to everything else we just did. I just showed you that probably in what, 2 minutes? And again, go back and watch that again on how I did that, where we spent all the time working in that 4 overlap group. We just copied and pasted, shifted some things around, and changed what? I think 1 little animation formula, and we're good to go. You would have to repeat that process for number 6, 7, and 8. I'll do that off the video because you can just go back and rewind and watch that same part again. Look for this preset, part number 5, I think it is, to the Google sidebar. And that's it for this long video. I hope it helped.